They called it the final before the final. Two teams that had barely been touched all summer. The most feared attack in the tournament against the meanest defense anyone had seen. 90 minutes to decide who walked toward glory and who walked home. And on the one night the whole planet was watching, one of these giants completely disappeared. Not the one you would have guessed. In this video, we are breaking down the 2026 World Cup semifinal between France and Spain from the very first whistle to the very last. The penalty that split the football world in two. The referee who spent the entire night under fire. The teenager who did the damage without even scoring. And the 14-year reign that quietly ended in the Texas heat. This was billed as a heavyweight collision. It turned into a masterclass. Stick around, because the controversy runs a lot deeper than one spot kick. Let us set the stage first, because you cannot understand how strange this result felt without understanding how these two teams arrived. France came into this semi-final looking almost untouchable. Didier Deschamps had assembled a front line that read like a fantasy team. Kylian Mbappé leading the line as captain and as the tournament's golden boot leader. Ousmane Dembélé cutting in from the right. Mikel Olise drifting between the lines. Bradley Barcola stretching the left. And that was before you got to the bench, where Desire Du and Ryan Cherki were sitting. Two players who would walk into almost any other national team on earth. France had scored for fun. They topped a group containing Senegal, Iraq, and Norway. Without breaking a sweat, then rolled through Sweden, Paraguay, and Morocco in the knockouts without conceding a single goal. 6 matches, 16 goals scored, only 2 conceded. They were, on paper and on the grass, the most complete attacking team left standing. Spain arrived a very different way. Slow starters. They opened with a goalless draw against Cabo Verde that had a few people whispering. Then something clicked. They put 4 past Saudi Arabia, edged Uruguay 1-0, brushed aside Austria 3-0 in the round of 32, and beat Portugal 1-0 in the round of 16. Their defense had not conceded a single goal for what felt like an eternity, right up until the quarterfinal against Belgium, when Charles de Ketelaere finally breached them. 1 goal in the entire tournament. That was the wall France had to knock down. Luis de la Fuente had built a team around control. Rodri setting the tempo from the base. Pedri floating between the lines. Fabian Ruiz and Dani Olmo linking everything. And out wide, the 19-year-old who had become the face of world football, Lamine Yamal. So there it was, France's fire against Spain's ice. And before a ball was even kicked, the fire came from the talking. In the build-up, reports circulated that Yamal had suggested France should be the ones who were afraid of Spain. It was exactly the kind of line that gets a semi-final simmering. The media ran with it hard. But here's the interesting part. The French players largely refused to take the bait, and Yamal himself came out and explained that his words had been twisted, that the meaning had been lost in translation and repetition. He said it had been misinterpreted. Whether you believed him or not, the psychological game was already underway before kickoff, and it added a layer of edge to a fixture that already carried plenty of it. Spain had, after all, knocked France out of the Euro 2024 semifinal and beaten them in a Nations League thriller. This was not a neutral pairing. There was history and there was needle. Now, the setup on the day. Deschamps made 2 notable calls. He brought Aurélien Tchouameni back into the starting 11 after an injury scare, a fitness gamble on a man who is his single most capped ball winner, and he restored Barcola to the left ahead of Doué. For Mbappé, the match carried a personal milestone. It was his 21st World Cup appearance, which officially moved him past Hugo Lloris as the most capped French player in the history of the tournament. Tchouameni, for his part, was earning his 50th cap. Spain, meanwhile, came in with a clean bill of health and simply rolled out their strongest hand, the machine that had strangled the life out of everyone in front of them. And that was the tactical question the entire football world had been chewing on for a month. How do you stop France? How do you deny a front four that fast and that clinical? The answer Spain arrived at was the boldest answer of all. They decided they would not try to outscore France. They would simply refuse to give France the ball. Spain do not keep possession for decoration. They defend with it. The longer they hold it, the fewer chances the opponent gets to hurt them. That was the plan. Starve the fire of oxygen. And the terrifying thing, as we are about to see, is how perfectly it worked. And the place everyone expected this match to be won or lost was the middle of the pitch. Spain's entire rhythm ran through Rodri, the metronome at the base who dictates tempo and decides when Spain speed up and when they slow you to a crawl. For France, the counterweight was supposed to be Aurélien Tchouameni, the one true ball winner in the side, which is exactly why his fitness had been such a talking point in the build-up. The whole French plan depended on that midfield screen holding firm, on Tchouameni and Rabiot shielding the back four so Mbappé and Dembélé could be sprung into space the instant France won possession back. The problem was simple. To win the ball back, you first have to make the other team give it away. And Spain, for 90 minutes, simply refused. But before we get to the goals, we have to talk about the officiating, because it started early and it did not stop. The referee for this one was Ivan Barton of El Salvador, and he found himself at the center of the storm inside the opening 10 minutes. In the 9th minute, France midfielder Adrien Rabiot went into a challenge on Dani Olmo and was shown a yellow card. Fair enough on its own, but a few minutes later, Olise committed what several observers felt was an even worse foul, and there was no card at all. That inconsistency lit a fuse. Spanish supporters were not happy, and neutral fans watching around the world started to notice a pattern. One fan commenting on the officiating said that whenever this particular referee took charge of a big match, there always seemed to be a poor performance or a scandal attached to it. That was the mood in the stadium and online. Barely 10 minutes gone, and the man in the middle was already the story. Then came the moment that decided the match and split the football world clean down the middle. Around the 22nd minute, Lamine Yamal drifted into the France box, half a step ahead of Lucas Digne. Digne, the France left back, had his back turned and went to clear the ball. He never saw the teenager. His swinging leg caught Yamal flush, striking him on the thigh and hip, and Yamal went down. Barton pointed to the spot without a flicker of hesitation. Penalty, Spain. And instantly, the arguments began. France protested, and their protest had two parts. The first was the idea that Yamal had handled the ball moments before the contact, that there had been a handball in the build-up that should have wiped the whole thing out. Replays did show the ball near Yamal's arm, and for a few minutes the entire outcome of a World Cup semifinal hung on exactly where the ball had struck. The second part of the French complaint was quieter, a sense that Digne had barely made a protest himself, which told its own story. So who was right? The analysts went to work. On ITV coverage, the former FIFA referee and rules expert Christina Unkel studied the footage frame by frame and delivered a verdict that will not have pleased French supporters. She explained that the point of contact was on the sleeve of Yamal's shirt, not on the arm itself, and that under the laws of the game, contact on the sleeve is not treated as part of the arm. Therefore, she said, there was no handball offense and the penalty should stand. The Spanish forward had done nothing wrong in the build-up. The former England defender Gary Neville took a slightly different angle on the same incident, turning his fire on Digne. Neville pointed out that when you are dealing with a player as dangerous as Yamal on the outside, you simply have to know where he is at all times. He noted that Digne had closed his body off and then completely lost track of his opponent, that he had no clue Yamal was even there. And he drew a comparison to how other defenders in the tournament had been punished for the exact same lack of awareness. The former Celtic and England striker Chris Sutton, watching for the BBC, made a similar observation, describing how Digne had gone to volley the ball and instead volleyed the teenager on the hip. And that comparison Neville made is worth pausing on because it reveals a pattern. This was not the first penalty of this type in the 2026 World Cup. Croatia captain Luka Modric had been punished for a near-identical incident earlier in the tournament, and so had England captain Harry Kane. 3 times now, a defender with his back turned had caught an attacker who arrived a fraction earlier, and 3 times the whistle had gone. The officials had been consistent about this specific situation all summer, which is a large part of why the penalty against France, however unlucky it felt for Digne, was so hard to overturn. Up stepped Mikel Oyarzabal. Cool as anything, he ripped a left-footed spot kick past Mike Maignan and into the corner. 1-0 Spain, and it was Oyarzabal's 5th goal of the tournament. The best defense in the competition now had a lead to protect, and that, for France, was close to a nightmare scenario. Because France had barely faced any adversity all tournament, they had not trailed in a single match, and the history hanging over them was brutal. Only twice in the entire history of the World Cup has a team come from behind at halftime to win a semifinal. France, specifically, had never won a World Cup match after trailing at the break. So the moment that ball hit the net, the numbers turned against them, and it got worse before halftime. Around the half-hour mark, France lost the Arsenal center-back William Saliba to an undisclosed injury. Maxence Lacroix came on to replace him, forcing a reshuffle at the back at the worst possible time. Then France went in search of a leveler and found only the Spanish wall. Aymeric Laporte and the young Pau Cubarsí were magnificent in the middle of the Spanish defense, snuffing out every French counter before it could catch fire. Mbappé's pace flickered a couple of times, but never truly ignited. The half ended with Spain 1 goal to the good and utterly, serenely in control. 45 minutes stood between France and the end of a golden generation's latest World Cup, and between Spain and a first final in 16 years. One team needed a reaction. The other needed only to keep doing exactly what it had done all night. And when the whistle blew for the second half, it was the team in red that looked completely unbothered by the size of the moment. Deschamps knew he had a problem, and at halftime he made his first move. He withdrew Adrien Rabiot. Remember, Rabiot had been carrying that early yellow card since the 9th minute, playing the entire rest of the half-one rash challenge away from being sent off. It was too big a risk to carry into the second half of a World Cup semi-final, so Manu Kone came on in his place, a fresh set of legs and no disciplinary cloud, tasked with dragging France back into the contest. Kone might have felt unlucky not to have started. Now he had 45 minutes to save his nation's summer. So France came out for the second half needing everything to change. And within about a quarter of an hour, everything did change. Just not the way they wanted. In the 57th minute, Deschamps went to his bench again, sending on Desire Dewey for the anonymous Barcola. A minute later, Spain killed the game. It was a beautiful goal, and it came from an unlikely source. Pedro Porro, a fullback, exchanged a slick give-and-go with Dani Olmo on the right, kept running, took the return pass in his stride, and side-footed a composed finish past Maignan. 2-0. With all that attacking talent scattered across the pitch, with Mbappé and Yamal and Dembélé and Olmo on the field, it was a defender who delivered the decisive blow. France had conceded only twice in the entire tournament coming into this match. Now, they had shipped the same number in under an hour against La Roja. That goal broke France. You could see it. Deschamps threw more attacking dice, pulling the ineffective Olise off for Rayan Cherki after the second half hydration break, and later sending on Theo Hernandez for Digne to freshen the flanks. Nothing worked. Spain did not panic, did not sit 10 men behind the ball and cling on. They kept the ball, moved France around, and made the reigning runners-up chase shadows. And here was the cruel part for Deschamps. On paper, the changes he made were exactly the changes you would want. Rayan Cherki is one of the most creative players in Europe, a footballer who can unlock a low block with a single pass. Desire Due had been one of the breakout stars of France's run. Theo Hernandez added attacking thrust from the left. On another night, against another opponent, any one of them swings a game. But none of it landed because Spain were not defending deep and inviting pressure. They were keeping the ball at the other end of the pitch, which meant France's creators spent the closing half-hour chasing rather than creating. You cannot unlock a defense you rarely get to look at. And this is the part of the story that will define how this match is remembered tactically. What Spain did to Kylian Mbappé. The Golden Boot leader coming into this semi-final was, by full-time, almost invisible. Mbappé finished the night with the fewest touches of any player on the pitch. Read that again. In a World Cup semi-final, the best forward on the planet touched the ball less than anyone else out there, including the goalkeepers by some measures of involvement in open play. Spain crowded him relentlessly in transition, closing every pocket of space before it opened, making sure that the one thing Mbappé needs, a runway to attack, simply never appeared. There was no room for the Real Madrid star to get into the game. His frustration eventually boiled over in the 86th minute, when he caught the Spain goalkeeper Unai Simon with a foul and was shown a yellow card for serious foul play. That booking told you everything. The most dangerous attacker in the tournament, reduced to a booking for a late challenge on a keeper because there was nothing else left for him to do. And Spain nearly made it 3. Late on, Yamal curled a gorgeous finish into the net from close range. The kind of goal that would have been the cherry on top, only for the offside flag to rise and rule it out. It would have been game over beyond any doubt. As it was, the 2-goal cushion was more than enough because France never truly threatened to close it. For the 19-year-old, it was the kind of night that turns a rising star into a permanent headline. He drew the foul that produced the opening goal. He linked the play that led to the second, and but for the raised flag, he would have had a goal of his own to cap it. Even without his name on the score sheet, he had shaped almost every meaningful moment of the match, tormenting an experienced France defense from the right flank and forcing Deschamps into changes he never wanted to make. If there were any lingering doubts about whether the teenager could deliver on the very biggest stage football has to offer, this was the night he answered them. Let us talk about just how one-sided this was, because the numbers are almost hard to believe for a match between two supposed co-favorites. France, the team with the most feared front line in world football, was restricted to around 3/10 of an expected goals from 10 shots. 3 of those shots were on target, and the telling detail is when they arrived. France's on-target efforts came late, largely in the dying stages when the game was already gone. For long stretches, the champagne football everyone had been promised simply never poured. At one point, the stadium's giant screen flashed the shot count, and it underlined the story in cold figures, France scrapping for a couple of efforts while Spain quietly did the damage that mattered. Spain took just 2 shots on target of their own. Both found the net. That is the definition of clinical. That is a team that took exactly what it needed and not one thing more. From a technical and tactical standpoint, several analysts called it about as complete a performance as you will ever see in a knockout match of this size. Spain neutralized a star-studded attack without ever looking stretched. They defended with the ball, controlled with the ball, and punished with ruthless efficiency the 2 times they chose to attack. France, so dominant for 5 weeks, picked the single worst night of the summer to go missing. So now let us pull all the controversy threads together because there are 3 of them, and they will be argued about for a long time. The first is that penalty. Was it soft? Digne certainly did not mean it, and there is a version of this match where the referee waves play on, and France go in level at the break as different team. But the experts who broke it down under the laws of the game, including a former FIFA official, concluded the contact was legitimate. The alleged handball was on the sleeve rather than the arm, and the decision was correct and consistent with how the same situation had been called against Modric and Kane earlier in the tournament. Unlucky for Digne, correct for the officials. Both things can be true. The second is the referee's wider performance. Ivan Barton spent the night under a microscope, and the early inconsistency, booking Rabiot and then waving away a similar or worse Olise foul, gave the doubters plenty of ammunition. There were other small flashpoints too, including a moment reviewed after Theo Hernandez and Unai Simon collided that ended in a goal kick for Spain. None of it changed the outcome. Spain were comfortably the better side, but the officiating became a talking point in a match that, at 2-0, arguably should not have needed one. And the third is the pre-match war of words, the Yamal comments that were reported as bulletin board material and then softened by the player himself, who insisted he had been misinterpreted. In the end, he let his football answer the questions. He won the penalty that opened the scoring. He nearly grabbed a goal that was chalked off for offside. And he tormented the France right side all night without ever needing to prove anything with his mouth. If France really were supposed to be afraid of Spain, the scoreboard did not exactly disprove the theory. There is a bigger story underneath all of this, though, and it belongs to one man on the touchline. Didier Deschamps has been in charge of France for 14 years. He lifted the World Cup as a coach in 2018. He took them within a penalty shootout of retaining it in 2022. He has been one of the most successful managers his country has ever produced, and it had already been signaled that this tournament would be his final act in the job. This was, in all likelihood, the last knockout match of his reign. And it ended not with a roar, but with a strange flat silence. His brilliant, star-packed team unable to muster a single meaningful attack until it was far too late. A group whose talent is simply undeniable, who once again could not deliver on the very biggest stage. France will still have the third-place playoff on Saturday, but for a team of this quality, that is cold comfort. They will be left to rue what might have been, and to wonder how an attack that terrifying could vanish so completely on the night it mattered most. For Spain, this is something else entirely. This is a return to the summit. La Roja are back in the World Cup final for the first time since 2010, the year they won the only World Cup title in their history. 16 years of waiting, ended by De La Fuente's team of controllers and technicians. They now sit and wait to discover their opponent, the winner of the second semi-final between Argentina and England, with all the weight of Lionel Messi and Harry Kane on the other side of the bracket. The final is set for Sunday at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. And on the evidence of what they just did to the most feared attack in the tournament, whoever comes through will face an enormous, possibly monumental task to stop them. Spain do not overwhelm you, they suffocate you, and they have not stopped for a month. And there is a delicious subplot waiting on the other side of the draw. 24 hours after France and Spain, Argentina and England were set to meet. Lionel Messi against Harry Kane, another heavyweight collision to decide who walks into that final in New Jersey. Whoever emerges will have watched this semi-final knowing exactly what is waiting for them. A team that does not need the ball to hurt you and will not give it to you when you need it most. Beating Spain will require something France, for all their firepower, could not find. A way to break the unbreakable. So that is the story of the final before the final that turned out to be no contest at all. A soft penalty that the law backed anyway. A referee who could not get out of his own way. A teenager who spoke loudly and then played even louder. A superstar smothered into the fewest touches on the pitch. And a 14-year era that reached its quiet ending under the Texas lights on Bastille Day, of all days. France brought the fire, Spain brought the ice. And the ice won. the way it always seems to against these opponents. Now the question is whether anyone left can melt it. Here is what I want to know from you. Was that penalty on Yamal a fair call? Or did Digne get robbed by a rule most fans did not even know existed? Do you think Spain are now the clear favorites to lift the trophy? Or does the winner of Argentina and England have what it takes to break them down where France so badly failed? Drop your verdict in the comments because I read them and I want to hear your side of this one. Like and subscribe for more World Cup mini documentaries because the final is coming, and you do not want to miss the deep dive when we find out who dares to face Spain for the biggest prize in the sport. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.